Welcome back, explorers. My name's David, that's Wesley, and this is the Trailcast.
The weekly show that gets so far off track, you'll have to stick around to see just where we end up. David, here's a question. Is our tagline going to change?
Probably, because... So, Wesley brings up an interesting point that we actually need to talk about with you all. Y'all. I don't know why I said you all. I'm not a Yankee.
About the three of you listening.
Yeah. So, it's come to our attention that we're really just a Star Wars podcast at this point. We like doing it. We've had good luck doing this. We've grown a lot doing this. So, we're going to lean into it fully. So, we are going to actually be rebranding at some point in the next 2 to 3 months, depending on how much this goes. So, yeah. So, we don't have a lot of concrete plan here. I mean, we do, but we know where we're going to end up. But for some of the stuff, we don't have a concrete plan. Right now, our plan is to finish out Bad Batch. So that will put us the first week of May. And then we're going to take a break. Not a long break, probably about a month. But we're coming back. Don't worry. When we're not showing up in your recommended feed, don't worry. We're coming back.
Don't get too excited.
Yeah, don't get too excited. We're still going to be there. We're still going to be annoying. Anyway. So we're working on some alternate titles for potentially the new name for the show. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to post a poll with the titles we have come up with. And you, listening at home, are going to select our new title.
David, would it be a bad idea? And if it is, go ahead and cut this out. But would it be a bad idea to say, hey, if you have any good names, leave them out?
Yeah.
I mean, we're already getting input, so.
Yeah, Wesley cut out a little there, so I don't know if he cut out or if I cut out. But yeah, yeah, if you have any good title suggestions, comment them down below, and yours might get picked to be in the poll, or the final poll for the actual title selection. So yeah.
Okay, well, David, hopefully I'm not cutting too much in and out, because moving on from business to the actual point of us doing the show, which is talking Star Wars, a new episode of Bad Batch came out this past week, and that is what is on the list for us to talk about first.
It's the first on the docket here. Yep.
First on the docket, and I can't cut out because they're strong opinions. However, David, I would like to know first what you thought of this week's episode.
It was an episode. Now, so this episode was another filler episode. We got a little. I feel like I'm a parrot here with all these episodes in season 3, because there's a bunch of the episodes like this that were filler episodes that actually did progress the plot some. But yeah, it really was just a filler episode, because the whole point of the episode was the Bad Batch tracking down Admiral what's his name from season 1 to try to get the coordinates to Tantus. And turns out he doesn't even know the coordinates to Tantus, but he can help them find it. So basically just a whole long, convoluted way of saying that they still don't know how to get to Tantus.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we have 3 episodes left.
Correct. That is correct.
So, here's the thing that I have been very patient, I feel like, with the Bad Batch, with the show. I'm starting the next 4 episodes are gonna be the best, the juiciest, the most informative episodes that we can get out of this show. And you know what we get? We get a that there possibly was at the end of it, which I thought was gonna be the main point of the episode. Didn't even, there wasn't even a point to it because sure, they got this general guy who says he knows how to figure out the coordinates to Kansas or whatever it is, but he gave no information whatsoever. So as of where we're at right now, with our understanding of the show and knowing what's going on, we have to wait till the next episode to get anything related to information related to how to get to Tantus. So all we know right now is the Bad Batch is in the same position. I'm sorry, I bumped the mic. Is in the same position as it was in the last episode, unable to get to Tantus, and Omega's on Tantus, and now she's in the vault. This episode did nothing. I expected more, and I'm
And
tired of the
even
Bad Batch not delivering. I've
and even
suffered
at
through
the
2.5 seasons of this, and I'm getting a little annoyed with it. I'm sorry.
and even at the very end of the episode when it seems like, so Hemlock is taking Omega into the vault, and it makes you feel like, okay, so I could be misremembering this completely, but in the like it was either the first or second episode, the one with Palpatine in it. They go
Mhm.
into the vault, and then they open up the thing, and you see their reaction to it, but you don't see what's inside.
Yeah.
So the whole time at the end of this episode, when they're going into the vault, I thought they're going to go to that part of the vault,
Yes.
but they go to what we've already seen in the vault. What we saw
Mhm.
last week in those
I
two
was
episodes
very
from last week.
disappointed with that. I
Yeah,
was very disappointed with that.
because I was thinking are we finally going to get to see Palpatine clones or something?
This episode did nothing. We have 3 episodes left, and we know nothing more than we did about 5 episodes earlier. I Here's the thing. The next 3 episodes could be complete grand slams. They could be the best thing Disney Star Wars has ever put out. They could top season 7 of the Clone Wars. I don't think they will, but they could, right? I can still be pissed off about this right now because here's the thing. We wait as Star Wars fans, we wait week after week after week for just a little bit more information of these shows that we care so much about for some reason. Yeah. And week after week, you know what we get? We get nothing.
Yeah, and it is kind of annoying because they're teasing so much and delivering so little.
I mean, I shouldn't expect anything less from Disney Star Wars. David, I think for a while there, we did get away from beating a dead horse on the fact that Disney Star Wars is awful, but we're back to it now. I don't know what they're planning on doing. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know how you know, they're going to do in Bad Batch, and I think the first episode of Tales of the Empire is coming out, and then the last episode of Bad Batch is coming out. I
Other way
believe
around.
that's what
Other way around.
it comes out that Wednesday, and then it's that week. Oh yeah, because May 1st is the
Yeah,
last episode. Okay, okay.
yeah.
Anyways, so I don't know what's going to be tied into and what's going to be taken from Bad Batch season 3, the series finale. Because as far as I'm pretty sure, this
Hmm.
is it for Bad Batch. So the series finale. This is it. This is supposed to tie these last 3. These aren't just the last 3 episodes of a season. The reason I'm a little annoyed here is because it's not just the last 3 or 4 episodes of a season. This is it for the series. Now,
Mhm.
this has not been that great. Okay, I've enjoyed a lot of The Bad Batch, but overall, it's not that great of a series. Like, here's the thing: if you're just a casual Star Wars fan, you are never gonna have a need, or really, I wouldn't even put Bad Batch up there with something you need to watch. If you are into Star Wars and you want to know more about the overarching scheme of things and the storyline of things, and you're really getting into Star Wars and you want more Star Wars, sure, watch the Bad Batch. That's why you and I are watching it, David. But it's not that great, right? Like Clone Wars. I think Clone Wars is great. Clone Wars has a lot of really great episodes. I've actually recently started rewatching some of the Clone Wars because I just love the Clone Wars. Now, some of that might just be nostalgia. That might be my bias. But I do think there's a lot of really good episodes in Clone Wars. There are some good
Mhm.
episodes in The Bad Batch, but there's a lot more in Clone Wars. And I'm not just going that off of the fact that they had more seasons. But um, you know, it, it's just like still this is it. You have to wrap up so much and you don't have that much time to do it. And with the pacing of these episodes, they pack so little into the episode that I have a hard time believing that episodes so I don't know what they're gonna push off to Tales of the Empire because I would be willing to bet that there's gonna be some overlap in there. But
Just the fact they're coming out back to back, essentially. Yeah.
yeah, and some kind, whether characters, are in one and in the other, or not, there's gonna be something to it. Um, but it's I mean, Ventress was in this. We may or may not see more of Ventress in Tales of the Empire. So there might be overlap, but similar to that. I don't know if, I don't know. There's a lot to get through, and not a lot of time. So when I first got into the episode, and they were like, "Okay, I have an idea. Here's what we're gonna do." I sat there and I was like, "Okay, this is a filler episode. All we're gonna see is a breakout." And in the back of my mind, I was like, "Okay, I'm okay with that because at the end, we're gonna get that reveal. We're gonna get something, but we didn't get that reveal. We didn't get the coordinates to Tantus. We didn't get, to see the inside of the actual vault. We just got more of nothing.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, honestly, and
I was very disappointed.
yeah. Honestly, I don't know how they're going to answer everything without like the next couple episodes each being an hour long,
Hmm.
or maybe at least just the last one being an hour long.
I'm trying to think of what it was. Ahsoka. That's what it was. Ahsoka's last episode. Before Ahsoka's last episode came out, there was so much that you and I talked about that we were like, there's so much left to be answered, and they have one episode to do it in.
Mhm.
It was like the last couple episodes. They answered it all, but I don't think that they took the right amount of time in answering everything. Like I was okay with it, but I also felt like it might have been better if they gave more time to things. Um,
Well,
and I
they
was
answered
annoyed with
some
that.
stuff, but they also did leave stuff for season two. But we're not gonna get another season. This is the last season of Bad Batch, so they have to either answer everything in this or have another spin-off show.
Well, they took so much time to get to the point in Ahsoka, and then the answers that they did give, they rushed. In my opinion, they rushed, and I don't want them to do
Hmm.
that with this. and I feel like they probably will end up doing that because it's following a very similar pattern. Star Wars has gotten in pattern, and I don't know if they're ever going to shake it. The big thing that I've seen is people getting annoyed that Omega got captured again, and now we're going to have another rescue mission of Omega again, and it's just
Mhm.
same thing over and over again, and it's constantly just this turnover of constantly having to go rescue this character. Not necessarily always being Omega. I think they also mentioned um, some parallels with other shows doing similar things like this, where a lot of them are just rescue missions, which is
Mhm.
very annoying. Um, but there's a lot you can do in Star Wars, and I hate that they aren't fleshing out and doing more storyline wise. I mean, these are professionally paid creative writers, and the best they can come up with is. I'm not saying that I hate the Bad Batch or anything like that. I'm not even saying that the idea of having a character get kidnapped and them rescuing it is a bad idea. But when you've done it multiple times, it gets a little lazy.
There is such a thing as overdoing it. What's that kind of thing? Yeah.
Exactly. So, um, moving away from my disdain for the fact that we didn't get much information in this episode, I had seen a theory. I don't know if we had talked about this. Maybe we had. If we have, then oh well. You're gonna hear it again. Had we talked about uh the possibility? I know we talked about the ZX Special Forces Trooper guy about the possibility of him being Tech, but did we
Mhm.
talk about the possibility of him being Cody?
No, and I actually have not heard that theory, so go on, elaborate.
Well, there's not listed it being Cody, and I kind of really like that idea because, like, what happens to Cody, right? I mean, Cody isn't just some random clone. I mean, first off, we've mentioned this before. Cody is the first clone that we've have a name to because episode 3, um, Revenge of the Sith came out before the Clone Wars did when we got a lot of names for clones, and in that we got Commander Cody, and then he
Mhm.
shuffled over to Clone Wars where we got more clones and we got closer to a lot of other clones like Rex and Fives and Jesse, other troopers like that. But we knew Cody from the start. We
Mhm.
did get to see there. Uh, the interesting thing about him there was that he seemed to start to have his doubts about the Empire too. So I'm not entirely sure what route they're planning on taking with this mystery character that's been around is Cody, and one of the ones, or the one that's not ready yet, as Hemlock says, uh, is Tech forces or whatever they're doing. Um, Obviously, if it is Cody, because of the fact that I do think that he was showing some doubts in that one episode somewhere in season 2, um, where him and Crosshair were talking next to the mural or whatever of or not the mural, but the wall with all the names on it, I think is what it was.
Mhm.
Um, I think that he was showing some doubts there, so he would have had to gone under. He would have had to gone through something to have gotten to the point where he's so loyal to the Empire now. Obviously, any clone would have to do that because most of them did have doubts. And I like it because I feel like they need to have an ending to Cody
Mhm.
because
Because
what
I know we've
happened to
talked.
him? We don't see him. We don't see him later in Rebels
Yeah,
when
and I
we
know
see
we.
Rex.
Well, I know we've talked about the fact that originally one of Dave Filoni's ideas for Rebels was to have, or when he brought Rex, Wolf, and Gregor in, was to have Cody be an antagonist, be a loyalist,
Yeah.
and so that would be an interesting idea. Now, as to your talking about him having doubts in the Empire, there was a there was a line in that two-parter where the when the one that ends up that Rex and his men captured. He's talking to I think it's when he's talking to Crosshair. He mentioned like Crosshair, like you could have been one of us, and then they also talk about how like, or I think Crosshair. I don't know if it's Crosshair or if it's him that mentions like the training they go under is like very like rigorous and basically like you don't have like they don't have any of their prior like identity left.
Yeah.
So that could be part of it.
Hmm.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
I
Who
think
knows?
he would have had to done something like that to be able to be the way
You know,
he is now after where we've seen him last, if it is code.
basically what if it is Cody, what could have happened was that if it is Cody, basically what could have happened is he was low, or basically not following orders, so the Empire turned him into what he is now, essentially.
Yeah. And that's a possibility, and I wouldn't be opposed to that. Again, that's something that would take a good bit of explanation um to find out. But I would be interested to see if it is like I mean, obviously if they're keeping it a secret, so it's gotta be something. It can't just be some random clone. If it is, then it's basically just the merit thing make up to be important for a couple.
Yeah, it not saying it's not going to be a original character, but it would.
It wouldn't make sense. Personally, I don't think it would.
Yeah,
But David,
I don't really have more to talk about with Bad Batch because like I said, it was kind of just
I ran it about yeah, it
It's,
wasn't
it was
much of
kind
a
of just a meh episode, which I think is kind of what. Hopefully, we get that point across.
hopefully. Well, David,
Disney, do
uh,
better.
speaking of Disney disappointing, um, the story's not disappointing, but what's disappointing is origin. That's the word I'm looking for. The origin
the
of this
the the story itself is not disappointing, but the real life story behind it is.
story. Yeah, the story. A Wars arc. Um,
Okay, you're kind of cutting in and out. I don't like I said, I don't know if my internet connection says I'm good, so I don't know if it's
well,
you cutting in and out or if it's me.
mine just came back,
But
so I'll repeat what I said if I'm good
okay,
now. Okay.
yeah,
So, uh, the story itself is not disappointing, but what happened is this Clone Wars arc before Clone Wars got canceled at the end of season 6. Now, obviously,
hmm
it came back later on with season 7, but they did not revise this storyline. the storyline we're talking about ties very well into what we've been talking about and what we will continue to be talking about over the next. Learned this. I have a feeling that there's got to be this is going to be important to Tales of the Empire. I have a feeling just because of the fact that it has to
Yeah, so I don't know how
do
much
what's
did that
happening.
got. Yeah, yeah.
Am I cutting
So
out?
yeah, you were cutting out a little bit in and out there. But yeah, essentially, yeah, we're talking about uh
Was it
Dark
my internet?
Disciple. Yeah, mine's full bars too, so I'll repeat it too, and hopefully we'll actually get one of us will actually have full explanation of what we're actually talking about. Yes, we're talking about Dark Disciple, which was originally written for the it's originally a story arc that was written for the canceled season 7 of Clone Wars. And the writer from Clone Wars who wrote this arc ended up taking that and she turned it into the book Dark Disciple.
Was it written by Katie Lucas? I know she had a thing at the end.
I think the book was written by Katie Lucas.
She had a part in it. I know that. Um,
Because
and
I
I
know
know,
that note at the end was like it said author's note, so
yeah. Um, so to sum up real quick, because we're gonna dive into this in more detail. To sum up this book, it is a story about Jedi Master Quinlan Voss, a Jedi Master that is sent on a lot of undercover missions. Dooku. Dooku has caused a bunch of problems during the Clone Wars. And the Jedi Council has deemed it necessary that uh, Dooku be assassinated. They need him killed. Saz Ventress, because she has tried to kill Dooku many times. She used to be his apprentice. She knows how to. She would know how to get to him.
mm.
So in this line of thinking, or in this line of way the story goes, uh, they end up getting close, falling in love, and never end up killing Dooku. Generally, that's the general gist of the book. Obviously, they can't kill Dooku because this is well before Revenge. Well, not well before. I don't know what time frame. If it was the end of, if it was season 7 of the Clone Wars, it
So
can't be
this
that
book
far
so this book
removed.
takes place between so I called it earlier before Wesley and I started recording. I called it Clone Wars season 6.5. And that's when I'm assuming this is going to take place because it obviously, well, it's the cancel season 7, so it obviously takes place after season 6 of Clone Wars. And season 7 of the Clone Wars brings us right up to Revenge of the Sith, which of course Count Dooku dies in. Now, it could take place between some of the arcs in the season 7 that we actually have, the Disney season 7. But I'm going to assume that just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to assume that it takes place between season 6 and 7 of the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm. Now, to find an actual time frame for it would be hard because there are some time gaps in it.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know what the whole span of time that this book takes place in is supposed
it,
to
it
be,
it's
but it
it
felt
seems
like
to
at
be
least a
months
year.
though. Yeah,
It felt
because they
like at
mentioned like
least,
months on end.
yeah. So it feels like a long time.
Hmm.
Close to a year, maybe not quite, maybe a little over, somewhere in that frame. So it there's pinpointing it is a little difficult. But anyways, um, but yeah. David, I know you're not really one for love stories, but I mean, what do you think of this one?
it was it was decent. I mean, it had a lot of it was very to me, it was very reminiscent of parts of it were reminiscent of the Anakin Padme. Like not so much
Mhm.
that, but there were parts that were. But the big similarity I saw was Revan Bastila.
Yes, I was thinking of that, and I was gonna mention that if we did get this would have been Disney's version of Revan with him being split between the light and the dark. He wasn't
Mhm,
completely that way, but that would have been what this was. Also, the imprisonment, with the Sith for such a long
mhm.
period of time, there was a lot of parallels that I saw between that.
Yeah, so let's go over just the basic plot of this part of the book to understand why I say that. So
Mhm,
people who have not read this book can understand why I say that. So, obviously Quinlan and Asajj are trying to kill Count Dooku. Asajj Ventress is working as a bounty hunter at this time. So Quinlan, to try to get uh Asajj Ventress's trust, goes undercover and starts working with her for bounty hunting. And that span of the book does take place over a span of a couple months because they work several jobs.
mhm,
Um,
yeah.
and then at the end of this part of the book, come to find out, Asajj Ventress knew that he was a Jedi the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, you think about it like, and Obi-Wan mentions this, I will say, uh, I hadn't thought about it. It makes sense, but I wasn't ready for how many familiar characters were going to be in this book.
Mm,
I knew the core of the story was Dooku or Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Voss were supposed to kill Dooku,
mm,
and that by the end of it, spoiler alert, Asajj Ventress dies. Um, but that was about all I knew about it. So Kenobi being a huge part of the story, that part of this story too, weren't something that I was expecting. I
mm.
guess I probably should have been, but I wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. Obi Wan and Anakin play because this was written as a Clone Wars arc, and Obi Wan and Anakin are the main characters of Clone Wars,
Mhm.
or at least
And it
the
makes
main
sense.
Jedi characters. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um.
I didn't get to my point with that though. What I was going to say was Obi-Wan at one point mentions that Ventress is not basically not an idiot, so he has to
Mm,
play it really well, which Quinlan is used to going undercover, which that's his main task
mm,
throughout the Clone Wars that he's been doing is he's been going undercover. I think even before that he probably had been um busting like smugglers and drug dealers, stuff like that. Um and so he doesn't always have to suppress
mm.
his abilities as flow. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Anyway, so through a series of events, they track down Count Dooku. I believe the first time they find him, he's on.
whatever the CIS homeworld base is when they find him.
I thought the
They go to
first time
that.
they track him down was at his whatever. Anyway, they track him down. Quinlan. So Dooku is being guarded by pretty much being guarded by Grievous, which they weren't
Mhm,
expecting. So through a series of events, Quinlan Voss ends up getting captured by Dooku. Asajj Ventress escapes.
mhm.
So then, like
It is
Leslie just
important.
mentioned.
It is important to mention um once Ventress is going to move towards assassinating Dooku. Ventress told him that he is not at current powerful enough to beat Dooku, so he
Mm,
needs to train basically in the dark side. Not necessarily as a Sith, without basically being consumed by it. So they go to Dathomir for a time and they do some stuff, yada yada yada. He gets closer to the dark side through that, which makes while he's with Dooku, him falling to the dark side a lot easier.
Mhm. Yeah. So essentially, Dooku tortures him when while he's captured, and Quinlan ends up falling to the dark side. And essentially, the next half of the book is about Asajj trying to bring Quinlan back, which by the end of the book, she does,
By
but
sacrificing
ends up
herself.
dying in the process. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
By the end of
that is why I say it's a very, very reminiscent of Revan and Bastila, because,
mhm.
well, obviously, uh, well, it might depend on the ending you get in KOTOR. I don't remember how many endings there are in KOTOR, but ending's slightly different. But um, like I said, basically the whole bring romantic arc with bringing um one of them back from the dark side. That's why it reminded me of KOTOR.
um, this is sticking out in my mind right now. So I'm gonna go ahead because uh, I know Ahsoka was one of the characters. There was someone else, but I know the Ahsoka scene was where uh it was her and Vader in Rebels, and she
Hmm.
said, "I won't fight you." And there was another scene where it was like, I'm not gonna fight you or whatever, for some other Jedi. And
That
then
was
it was
Luke and
Obi.
Vader.
That's what it was, Luke and Vader. Because I might have already mentioned this to
Yeah.
you or sent it to you. Yeah, and then it was because in this book, there's a point where um the council thinks or believes or has evidence or whatever. I don't remember which at which point time and was kind of a double agent. Um, Once they had rescued him, they thought he was still secretly working with Dooku. Okay, I see you're cutting out on my screen. Am I cutting out on yours?
Yes.
Okay. Am I coming through any clearer now?
Yes.
Okay. So, anyways, the council is talking about executing Quinlan Voss, and Kenobi, through a series of events, convinces them not to. Um, and then he says, "I will follow Quinlan when we reassign him to kill Dooku. I will follow him and make sure that he completes the mission like he's supposed to. And if anything goes sour, Yoda tells him, he said, well, if anything goes sour, you have to do what you must." He says that line. And I was like, usually that's Obi-Wan's line, but I like that someone else said it here, and Obi-Wan just agreed with it because he's like, Quinlan is my friend, but if he has turned, I will do what I must if I have to kill him,
Mm,
you know. And it's
yeah.
like that's always what Kenobi does. Is he always he never he showed a lot of I really liked his character in this book. Anakin, as always, was rash. Quinlan was a little back and forth at times. Ventress was Ventress in this book.
Hmm.
Um, and Mace Windu got under my skin.
Mace Windu was the
But
personification of dogma, but that's
yeah,
still that's Mace Windu's character though.
which I do like. But Obi-Wan was a very calm voice of reason in this book.
Hmm.
And honestly, obviously was a lot of the times, but like Plo Koon, uh, Coyote Mundi, Mace Windu were all like lashing out. Let's
Mm. Yeah, can we just talk about that too? In this book, the Jedi Council,
a little bit.
the Jedi Council made a lot of like honestly bad decisions because, like, okay, you just mentioned, you know, middle of the book,
I think
but like what you mentioned, the middle of the book that they have the whole thing where you know they tell Obi-Wan to execute Quinlan without a trial or anything. And then the whole thing of begin with the whole point of the book. The whole plot starts because the Jedi Council tells Quinlan Voss to assassinate Dooku.
also, you know, to get to my point, um, that I'm stumbling over making currently. Uh, I think this would have been great as a season 7. Like if they did season 7 like this, and then they did like a season 8 with what we got.
Mm,
And the reason I think that'd be really good, or maybe make it where like the end of like have this 7. And the
mm,
reason I think it'd be so good is because it would show just how blind the council had gotten. Because there's a lot of bad moves the council made. Like is the council is awful in this. The
mm,
council has no wisdom whatsoever. Yoda is a voice of reason, but he still has some power and how blinded they got before we see them in Revenge of the Sith. I mean,
mm,
one, Quinlan Voss had fallen. He states that at the end of the book. He had fallen when he was rescued back. When he came back to the Jedi, he had fallen. He was suppressing the fact that he was, still Sith, on the dark side. And the Jedi Council didn't see a thing. Asajj Ventress noticed it,
mm. And that
but the
that
count.
and that actually does lead very well into Revenge of the Sith, especially with what we were talking about with Mace Windu, because Mace Windu was the ringleader in all this with oh, we need to assassinate Dooku. Oh, we need to execute Quinlan Voss. He was the ringleader. He was the ringleader and all that. And that leads very well into wait, Palpatine's a Sith Lord. Let's go kill him right now.
Yeah. Also, I do find it funny how Mace Windu. And there was a specific time that I thought about this. And the dark side and how bad it is and all that stuff. And Mace Windu, as always, shot out a remark of some kind and basically condemning it or whatever. Your character's description is that you kind of balance yourself between the light and the dark. Like that's part of Mace Windu's character is that he is a Jedi, but he also holds that aggression. Now, obviously, like within his fighting style, he's perfected it because he doesn't want his aggression to consume him.
Mm,
But as far as the Jedi go, Mace Windu is closer to the dark side than most.
yeah.
And he's the one over here cautioning everyone about it. And it's like I understand you think you're so much better than everyone else, but, you accidentally stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
I love like any accountability for Quinlan's fall or his actions. Like Obi-Wan said that they needed to and should, but they never really did, you know?
Mhm.
And that just also shows just how arrogant the council had gotten by the time Revenge of the Sith came around.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, even in Revenge of the Sith, like, I mean, the state of the Jedi Council during the entire prequel era in shambles just because
Well, it was supposed to be.
somehow,
It.
yeah, somehow they didn't even notice that, the most powerful person in the Republic was a Sith Lord. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Something I noticed in the book is Quinlan at one point mentioned he didn't like how the Jedi were generals in the army,
Mhm.
and he said we're supposed to be keepers of the peace. We're not supposed to be leaders in the army. Like this is not what we're supposed to do. And you know, he is a master. He wasn't on the council, but he is a master, and it was good to see someone who was like, "Hey, we really need to rethink things," because the council thought it was a great idea, more or less, to just lead the campaigns in the Clone Wars. And,
Mhm.
like you said, the council was in shambles throughout the whole entire prequel time. Um, but it really got bad during the Clone Wars. And part of it was because of the fact that they decided it was a good idea to participate that heavily in the Clone Wars. I understand being keepers of the peace that to keep the peace, sometimes you have to fight. That's why they have a lightsaber. They were no longer uh they weren't I mean they were generals.
Mhm. Also, the fact that the Jedi Council
They weren't
was also the fact that Jedi Council was playing politics through all this.
good. Yes, that too.
They were
But
getting very heavily involved in politics.
deciding that it was okay to execute people
Mhm.
in this book specifically. But what was I getting at? Oh, nope. Nope, I lost it. I gotta think about it now. Oh, I don't remember. The Jedi Council is just so messed up. Um, and it has to be, obviously, for things to go like they need to. Um, and I'm not
Mhm.
surprised because obviously we've seen a lot from this era of Star Wars. We know how it goes, we know how it ends, we know how the council is.
Well,
Just
I
to
mean,
see
this is
more of it
probably
though is interesting.
yeah, this is probably the era of Star Wars that we've seen the most of.
Mhm. Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Just between the prequels and Clone Wars and well, really just the prequels and Clone Wars we've seen the most from this era.
To be fair though, the original trilogy doesn't span as vast a time though.
No, because the Galactic Civil War from the Battle of Yavin to the Battle of Endor was only like 3 years, and then the Clone Wars was like supposed to be like 7 years or something.
Mhm. Plus, if you do count in the fact of whatever the span of about 10 years or whatever between Phantom Menace and
True, true.
which adds more time to it, even though we don't really see much of that time.
Yeah, because that was before the Clone Wars.
What if we got an animated TV show of Anakin, just to get some of the references that they make? We don't need to span that time.
No,
But yeah.
no.
Uh,
If we need a Master and Apprentice show, we need like more Dooku, Qui Gon, or some Qui Gon Obi Wan. Like honestly, if we're gonna see that, you know.
yeah. I also not. It it was a okay, it's about 11-hour audiobook. David doesn't have that luxury anymore. So you finished this book, you said Tuesday. I have
Yes.
basically I have basically been listening to this book nonstop since Monday, and I just finished about an hour before we started recording.
Yeah. So,
um,
like I told you before the podcast, I started this Monday morning when I got to work, and when I got home, I'm like, because I listened to it in the car too, driving home from work. When I got home from work, I had like 2 hours left.
yeah, I was telling Sarah about it. I was like, yeah, the last job I worked, you know, a 10, 11-hour audiobook, I'd look at that and be like, hey, that's gonna be my whole shift. I don't have to worry about finding anything else to listen to. Now I look at that and I'm like, well, dang, when am I gonna find time to listen to this? Anyways, it's a long book, but it doesn't. There's a lot of filler to it. I was listening to it, so they confront Dooku within the first, like they confront Dooku then. And so I'm looking here, and this is after he has been with Ventress as a bounty hunter for a couple months, and they've gone to a mission that they did, rescuing some kids for the Pikes.
Mm-hmm.
And they also go to Dathomir, and she trains him, and they go into detail about that. And by like chapter 15, they're already honored, and they're going to jump him at this party when he goes off by himself or whatever. And so I'm sitting here, what's this going to be about? I got like probably like 8 more hours of the book left. I'm like, what do I do? Besides trying to rescue him with the bounty hunters. Then she goes back with the Jedi to rescue him. Successfully gets him. Then they do some stuff. Then they go back after Dooku. Then they do some stuff, and then she dies.
Mm-hmm. Also, can I just talk about how this is probably the most evil interpretation of Dooku we have seen?
Yes, yes, and I loved it
Mm-hmm.
because I
Because
like because in Attack the Clones and in Revenge of the Sith, you look at his character, like you said, this is the most evil version of him. He is ruthless. He
mhm,
is bloodthirsty. He deserves to be assassinated.
Hmm. Because in this, yeah, obviously, Clone Wars is a kid show, so they can't get into like if this was a Clone Wars arc, this a lot of this would have been toned down. But like I said,
Are we
Dooku
sure Clone Wars
literally.
is a kid show?
Hmm?
Have you seen those things where it's like people who say Clone Wars is a kid show, and then it shows like all these very gruesome things that they show in Clone Wars?
Okay, but my point is, some of this would have been toned down a little bit if this was Clone Wars
Yes,
arc.
yes, yes. It would have been.
But because like you know, Dooku literally tortured Quinlan Voss to the point where he was like on the dark side.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the whole thing at the beginning of the book, why they said they needed to assassinate Dooku to begin with, because he like wiped out an entire civilian population on a planet. Like that's yeah,
But they sided with the Republic, so he said they needed to be made an example of. Yeah.
yeah.
I liked this incarnation of it because it makes Dooku the character he needs to be. He needs to be that kind of a character. He needs to be that evil for him to be the villain. I did like. Well, I got very annoyed at times. I listened to this a lot in the car with Sarah, and a couple times I remember there being uh, a fight, at least one or two. Anyways, there were chances for Dooku to have been killed in this book many times, and none of them were taken. Obviously, I knew that he wasn't going to die because
Mm,
he's in a later story. But
mm,
I was just like, you know how like when you watch Revenge of the Sith, you always hope that Anakin stays in the temple. You're like, maybe this time I'll watch it and he won't run off and chop off Mace Windu's hand and join the dark side. Maybe he'll
mm,
stay in the temple like a good boy. No, it never happens. Well, I was expecting maybe there might be a chance for Dooku to die. Never ended up happening. Any chances, but the way he got out of it, half the time the way he got out of it was he talked himself out of it. Dooku
mm-hmm.
is a skilled swordsman, and when he doesn't have a sword, he uses his tongue. That sounded a little weird, but he has a
Just move on. Moving on.
he has a silver tongue. He's very manipulative is the point.
Yes, yes.
So I don't know how you can edit that to make it sound good. I guess you can't. 60 years, David. 60 years. Yeah.
Anyway, now I think one of the big things that we need to touch on before we wrap things up is this book is supposed to be canon, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
It is. It is still considered canon.
And Ventress dies at the end.
He
However,
does.
we see Ventress in Bad Batch, which I think is the whole reason why you wanted to talk about Dr. Seibel to begin with.
Yep.
So, and I know there's a lot of theories because I was specifically
Well, now I
listening.
understand.
Hmm? What's up?
I said, well, now I have.
Okay. Well, but I was specifically listening for, or like, about Ventress's death to kind of understand what's going on. So I know the main theory is, she was resurrected by Night Sister magic,
Mhm.
and they do kind of make that ambiguous at the end of the book because so after
Hmm.
Ventress dies, Quinlan takes Ventress back to Dathomir to honor her as a Night Sister, and he ends up putting or like laying her to rest in a pool, a lake. I don't remember what exactly it was. A body of water.
Yeah.
And in the book, it describes like after Ventress was in the water, um, the green mist from Night Sister magic started radiating out or like filling up the area. But that's to the extent it goes to. So I can see how like you could spin that as like the process
Yeah.
starting for her to be resurrected, but I feel like we need more answers.
I do think we need more answers. There's a lot about the Night Sisters. So I looked this up, David, because we were talking about it. Now I could still be wrong because all I did was I looked at the titles and the descriptions of the episodes. But the episodes near the end of season 3, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. Am I coming through my connection? The way I dropped for a second.
You're good right now.
Okay. So we had a couple episodes near the end of season 3, if I'm remembering correctly. That is when we first meet the Night Sisters, and we have that little Night Sister arc. Uh, so obviously, the Night Sister purge has not happened at this point in time. Now, in that arc, we don't really get a whole lot information about it, um, but we get introduced to them, and we get a general idea of what the Night Sisters are. Well, then later on, near the end of season 4, we come back to them because we are starting to ramp up for Oppress. What's his first name? Saz? No.
Savage.
Savage. That's what I was looking for. Savage Oppress, for him to start looking for uh Maul, and then for Maul to be taken back to the Night Sisters and all that stuff happening. So they're still intact at that point in time. Um Now there might be things that I'm misremembering, not remembering, but after that I don't remember seeing anything about the Night Sisters. And just the um so we know very little about them. As we mentioned when we looked at the Tales of the Empire trailer, we have not seen the Purge. So there are a lot of questions to be answered. Maybe we'll get them in Tales of the Empire. Um, and I do think Ventress's character is going to be important for this time frame moving forward. Tales of the Empire, but I don't know if we will maybe see her. She has to be one of the survivors. Um, I was rewatching it the other day, and after the purge happens in the trailer, they show what's her name? From
Uh,
Ahsoka.
Morgan Elsbeth.
Morgan Elsbeth. They show Morgan Elsbeth, and beside her to survive the purge. Um, but I
Like I
do
said,
agree.
there already
Right.
are three Night Sisters that we know survive. Morgan
Hmm.
Elsbeth, Ventress, and Marin.
Hmm. And so there is a lot more that we have to learn. how the key thing that I picked up on, because we got to look at the purge, and she was talking about the little pods that they bury their sisters in.
Hmm.
They say that they fight with them. So I don't know how the pods and how the in Fallen Order.
Yeah, in Fallen Order, you fight the
Yeah, Fallen
like
fight.
the from the like pod things. Yeah,
So I don't know how that works. I just know that they were scarier than some of the other enemies I fought. They didn't look natural either. They didn't look like Ventress looked in Bad Batch. So maybe she
yeah,
just
they were
wasn't.
zombies.
Yeah, maybe she wasn't the answer. I also feel like the way that they did the story arc, they went in the author's note, right? Um,
Hmm.
in that, Katie, did you look that up? Was it written by Katie Lucas?
No, it wasn't, but it was. Which I was kind of confused because it says the author's note, and normally when there's an author's note in the book, it's the actual author of the book. But yeah, Katie, yeah, she wrote the Clone Wars arc that became the book. Hmm?
Okay. Yeah. So if she wrote the arc, and presumably Ventress was supposed to die in the arc, basically how she. So I wonder if the intent was.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, obviously she's back one way or another. Um, I do think Nisus Dramatic's
The simplest explanation,
the most
or
reasonable. Yeah,
most
simple,
reasonable.
most
Yeah,
obvious.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Before we jump off the subject too much, I have a question for you, David. If the
okay.
Jedi Council deemed it necessary to assassinate Count Dooku, and throughout talking about how bad Dooku is and how they want to kill him or arrest him or whatever, why? Oh, and to clarify just this, Anakin is in the room in the council meeting. Does Anakin hesitate when um he is about to chop off Dooku's head? Why does he say, okay, and I don't want this to, I just want to know what maybe some thoughts are behind why he was like, oh, he must stand trial, he must this. Did the council maybe just say, hey, we did this wrong, we need to do better, or
Maybe he was finally actually listening to Obi-Wan's teachings.
yeah, well, that's not a viable answer. So I know the out of universe answer, which is the logical answer. That movie was made
that
first, and this
yeah.
came later. But I'm just curious, of thoughts as to what a good in-universe explanation would be, because Anakin wouldn't have an issue killing Dooku. you know,
Hmm. Yeah, I
he had
don't.
wanted to do that. Maybe Ghost having said before this, hey, let's assassinate him. Why not?
Mhm.
But that was a question I wanted to pose to you. You don't seem to have much of an answer besides this dumb thing about Anakin actually listening to Obi-Wan. I do think in this book they made Anakin a little more childish and reckless than he was in Clone Wars, though.
Yeah.
That might have been just the book version of it, but uh, I don't know how they would have done it in the Clone Wars. But I think he got a little bit more mature in the Clone Wars than they showed in this book. It's a small thing; it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to mention that while it was on my mind.
Anyway, I don't know that I really have more to talk about with this. Do you?
No, I'm fine.
Yeah. And I know we did this last week, but I'm kind of tired. I'm kind of hungry. So how would you feel about
Mm,
just foregoing what's new with you and just calling it here?
We've been recording for about an hour and a half,
Yeah.
roughly. Roughly.
Well, hour and
Um,
15. We talked for about 15 minutes before then, so
it's a rough hour and a half. I think we're fine. David, eventually, after skipping what's new with you for long enough, we'll eventually have something new to talk about.
I mean, I could talk about a few things, but I'll save that for next week.
Say that for
So
next week.
stay tuned.
Um,
Anyway,
all right. Well, that sounds good to me. I think we can wrap the nice little bow on this. And if here's the thing, like David said, there were this story part of it, but it's not the greatest story Star Wars has ever told, but it was interesting. So if you haven't, while David falls asleep, go listen to the book, go read the book. It's a good story. So recommended it.
yeah, yeah. It's about
Anyways,
11 and a half hours, so it should take you about a day to get through.
yeah. I mean, 24 hours in a day, and I can nod
Yeah.
off to sleep.
Okay. Well, explorers, that's about all the time we have for today.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Let us know your thought in the comments down below, or you can DM us on Instagram and down there, YT.
Don't forget, if you made it all the way to the end of the episode, comment down below if you have an idea for what we should rebrand our name to. And with that, be sure to connect.